Last U.S. airstrike was like the plot of Top Gun 2, where they had to use two bunker busting bombs in succession in order to kill the target. And that's what we see what happened. Very successful mission. Probably one of many, because Iran is going to do something stupid and they're going to F around and find out. Now, for those of you out there that don't think that this should have happened, you are completely wrong. Democrat politicians who are bought and paid for by China are out there squawking about how this is a problem. But we've seen that they have a problem anytime we do anything to Iran, because Iran is backed by China, and these Democrat politicians are politicians are in turn paid off by communist China. And this is no hyperbole. This is no joking around. Joe Biden was paid off by the Chinese. Blinken was paid off by the Chinese. Eric Swalwell is paid off by the Chinese. He was banging Fang. We see that China's making a move. By the way, we are at war with China, and you may not know this. You may be hearing this for the first time. I'm just about always right. This one's easy to see. That's why I have this channel. I put things out and tell people what's happening, what's going on, because I've got a very high success rate. What's going on here is China and the United States are at war. China has done things that have declared war on themselves. They have interfered in U.S. elections. Back in 2018, President Trump put out an executive order saying that any foreign countries that interfered with the elections, that was considered an act of war. And we're seeing that China got involved in many aspects with cheating an election. I have to watch what I say here on YouTube. They did a bunch of stuff. We're seeing, and it's the news right now. We're seeing that thousands of fake driver's licenses were created by China, fake ballots, most probably. They caught them. And there's other things that the Chinese have done to start this war with America. They released a certain something that has to remain unnamed on YouTube, a virus. They did this in 2020, just before the election, to stop Trump from becoming president and continue on with their program of taking over the United States from within by paying off politicians and Manchurian candidates like Joe Biden and Blinken and so many others. Even what's his name, Mitch McConnell. He's a Chinese agent. He got $25,000 for marrying his Chinese bride, but she is she's the daughter of a high-level Chinese Communist Party guy. So, her father. So we are at war with China. Iran is their proxy. They're crying, the Democrats are crying that this may do some retaliations, but why against the U.S.? But they've never cared before. They don't care. They're full of crap. They're just using this hyperbole to try to resist and trip up Trump every chance they can get. Their main cry now is, we got to impeach him. Another third fake impeachment. And he has opened us up to attacks. Well, Iran was already attacking us as it were. They're also attacking everybody in the world, and they're doing it with the backing of China. China and the United States are at war. It is a silent war, but it's going to increase even more. By doing this, the United States, what they do is they stop. The big cry is, this is going to open us to retaliation. Well, what would you rather have, retaliation with drones and ballistic missiles, or would you have retaliation with nukes? I'm here to tell you Iran already has nukes. They probably bought some from Russia in the 90s when they were selling off whole nuclear subs with nuclear weapons on them, or they may have purchased one from Pakistan. They may have a couple, but what they want to do is they want to crank out their own so they can create nuclear bombs, pennies on the dollar for what they have to pay other people for. So what's worse, retaliation with drones and speedboats, or retaliation with nukes, with them trying to sneak one in? The border was porous. There's agents in here, Iranian and Chinese agents. They're working together. So what's worse? So I'm all for destroying this facility, and it in turn, once the Israelis and the United States, with backing from the United States, wax out this country, and the people rise up, and that's going to happen. What's eventually going to happen, this regime in Iran is brutal to the world, but also to its own people. So if you keep down the mullah and wipe out all of their decision makers, then what's eventually going to happen is the people are going to have enough of this and of the war, and they're going to flip and get the mullahs out, and it's going to be a whole new government. And that's going to deny China the natural resources that they're getting. They are going under sanctions to Iran for oil and natural gas because it's cheaper, but they're supporting each other. And there's Chinese cargo planes flying in there now under secret flight plans. What are they bringing in there? More missiles to hit Israel with? Are they actually bringing nuclear material in? China makes Hitler and his henchmen look like choir boys. China is way more evil than even the Nazis from the 30s, the Germans. And they have started a war with the United States just because Trump doesn't talk about it. He knows better than anybody. They have attempted to take him out multiple times, and they have done things across the world. There's also attacks that's been happening in the United States. Somebody hit Maui and LA and other portions of the United States with directed energy weapons. We see that has stopped now that Trump has gotten in. But somebody was hitting the United States, also heads of cattle and also chicken processing plants. So on top of getting their politicians in their pocket and killing the food chain and destroying whole areas. By the way, China's also working with the United Nations, the WHO, all that kind of stuff. So this is not just the Chinese, but the globalists. They wouldn't have been able to put together these technologies in which they're zapping the United States. They may still not have it. This may be the black nobility or other European or intelligence agencies' own personal direct energy weapons, whether they be drones, big planes, or satellites, or a combination thereof. We don't know. But China is behind it, or is in collusion with the directed energy weapons attacks that are going on in America, and is working with the globalists to topple America so then they can put themselves in position to be number one in the world and to take over the world. The globalists and Chinese are working on this. I've been talking about this for 20 years, and it's true. You'll see. You subscribe to my channel, you will see that I'm right over and over again, because I know the playbook, I know what they're doing, I know the players, and I know the end goals. I can call them. I've got a very, very good track record. So this Top Gun operation that they did is going to, we're going to check into it and get into the specifics of it. And just remember, this is to stop Iran from being able to nuke the United States with hypersonic missiles. They've now got missiles that go 5 times the speed of sound. It looks like that the Israelis can't stop these. And so Israel is fighting for its life. If they don't stop the nuclear proliferation, what's going to happen is Tel Aviv is going to go up in a fireball, and United States portions as well. So this had to be done. Don't listen to the leftists. Leftism is mental illness. And I'm not even joking when I say that. When you see these protesters, they never look well. They are criminals or they are mentally ill. They don't know what's really going on, so we have to battle through everything that they're doing anyway, all the crying and the screaming, and all of the other things that they're doing to attacking Tesla plants, terminating Democrat politicians that don't toe the line, which we just saw in Minnesota. Tim Walz is behind that, by the way. I've been talking extensively about how the Democratic Party uses death squads to take out people. They've used MS-13. They used a CIA hitter to take out the CEO of United Healthcare. This Luigi guy isn't the guy that did it. That's very obvious, but they're pumping it up. So what we're seeing is by doing this, the United States has taken out Iran so they can then deny a source of natural resources, gas and fuel, to the Chinese, and they are fighting back to what the Chinese have done to the U.S. They are shutting down their supply lines, hitting them with tariffs, stopping their illegal fuel that they're getting, and they are going to collapse economically, and they will eventually have to make a move, and that's when the United States will utterly destroy them. So I know that's quite an introduction. So we're going to go into the rest of this video here. I've been sent this. This is a crew called Business Basics, and let's check it out.
Operation Midnight Hammer, the U.S. airstrikes on Iran. They say it took all of 25 minutes for U.S. B-2 bombers to drop 14 bunker buster bombs on Iranian nuclear targets.
For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel.
The lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow.
So this is just insane. Everyone was wrong. The B-2s that were flying west towards Guam, well, they were not used in this mission. They were all a deliberate deception tactic that was carried out yesterday so the US command can fool the world and fool Iranians. In fact, the real mission was called Operation Midnight Hammer, and that included 7 B-2 stealth bombers that entered Iran along with dozen other fighter jets, and they took care of business in just 30 minutes. The Department of Defense just held a press conference this morning, I think just hours before I'm recording this, and here we have more details about this operation from Joint Chief of Staff General Dane Kane. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe down below to help out the video, and let's listen.
This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. I'll refer you to the graphic on the side as I walk you through some of the operational details. At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command area of responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the fourth and fifth generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped two GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against two nuclear target areas. All three Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the president stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all three sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of fourth and fifth generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11.
Now, a couple of things I want to point out that I noticed. First of all, while this mission was ongoing, President Trump did leave Washington, D.C. That could be a deception campaign too. Iranians and many people, including me in the media, believed that Trump is not going to carry out such an important mission while he's on the road. Well, guess what? While everyone was believing that, the mission was actually ongoing. As soon as President Trump landed back in Washington around 5 p.m. Eastern, if I'm remembering correctly, the jets were making their way inside Iran just an hour after he got into the Situation Room. Another thing to point out actually is, remember similar things happened back when we carried out the Osama raid, where President Obama at the time continued his normal schedule as if nothing had changed, so the world didn't suspect something big was about to happen. Now, another part was, so far, every time a B-2 mission has been carried out, especially in the Middle East, we use the Western route because the Western route has a couple of advantages. First of all, we don't have to tell anyone that we are breaching their airspace. Now, we know that the B-2s are likely not going to be detected by most radars and air defenses. It's still safer to take the Western route because we don't piss off our European allies, or we don't have to share that information with the European allies. So we did this back in 2003 when we carried out the B-2 raids to Afghanistan. We did it actually as recently as 2014 when the B-2s took off from Missouri and went to Yemen and they took the Western route. So when President Trump announced that he was repositioning some B-2s to Guam, everyone assumed that he was going to do the same thing. And I'm guessing Iranians assumed that too. So they were paying close attention to that Western route, all the while the real strike package was traveling east through the Europe, through the Arabian Sea, through the Mediterranean Sea, and it was going into Iran while no one was paying any attention, while no one was actually paying attention. Well, moving on here, we have satellite images of the strike. This is from this morning, and as you can see, this is the Fordo facility. You can tell some damage, you can't tell as much. This is where we have to remember we did use bunker busters, so a lot of the damage was underground. If you guys can see where my cursor is, you see these 3 holes right here? Well, that's probably where 3 of the bunker busters went in. If we zoom in a little more, we can actually see 2 sets of 3 holes. 3 right here and 3 right here. In fact, if we go to the next tweet, we'll see even better. Here's Chuck Farr, channel's favorite. He's pointing this out. 3 bunker busters here at the top of the image and 3 bunker busters here at the bottom of the image. This was just the Fordo facility. In fact, we know that we used roughly 12 MOP, 12 bunker busters. So I'm guessing 6 were used here and 6 were used at the Natanz facility. And then the Esfahan facility was targeted using cruise missiles from a submarine that was in the Arabian Sea. Now, moving on, there was also a Q&A, a press conference after this presentation that General Kane did, and this is what he was asked. Do you believe that some nuclear abilities in Iran remains? And this was his answer. Let's listen in.
Me? Yeah. So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Well, according to Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, the Iran's nuclear sites have been destroyed. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. Israelis do have a lot more ground agents in Iran than the United States. So maybe they know something that we don't know. I think the U.S. military command is heavily relying on satellite data and probably some intelligence from the Israeli. So maybe we want to believe Prime Minister Netanyahu that Iran's nuclear sites have been destroyed. Now, this is where I do want to point to the other side of coverage. Many pro-Iranian accounts and even Iranian officials are saying that they had moved out a lot of enriched uranium away from this site even before this war started because they were expecting something like this. I don't know how true that is. People in Middle East, especially the nations that are not too friendly with the United States, they have a habit of not giving credit where credit is due, I guess. They always make up some excuse as to say why the U.S. strikes were not successful. We saw this in Yemen and we are seeing this in Iran. Now, moving on with the Q&A at the press conference this morning, we also had some questions that were asked to the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and here are his answers. Let's listen in.
There.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Concerning the justification for these strikes, in March, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released their threat assessment, concluding, quote, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear programs he suspended in 2003, unquote. So what new intelligence does the U.S. have since then that the Iranians have changed their position on nuclear weapons? And does this new intelligence come from U.S. sources and methods, or are we getting this information from other countries?
Well, I would just simply say that the president's made it very clear. He's looked at all of this, all of the intelligence, all of the information, and come to the conclusion that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat, and was willing to take this precision operation to neutralize that threat in order to advance American national interests, reduce the Iranian nuclear program, and obviously collective self-defense of ourselves and our allies. So he looked at all of it, understood the nature of the threat, and took bold action I think the American people would expect in a commander-in-chief. That's all we've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any of the W's?
Now, President Trump also addressed the nation last night after the strikes, and this is what he said.
With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow.
Now, as you guys heard in the presentation from General Kane, the strikes took place 2 a.m. Iranian time, so we don't have a lot of good footage. This is where important thing to point out. Almost every footage you see online is fake. They are using either old footage or they're using footage from Ukraine, and they're claiming it as, oh, this is the footage of the strike that the US just carried out. Unfortunately, we still don't have any footage of the B-2 strikes. We don't have the footage from the Fordo nuclear facility or from the Natanz nuclear facility as of now. Confirmed footage, okay? But we do have footage from the Esfahan nuclear site where we used the cruise missiles from the submarine. And this footage has been confirmed by respected media personalities who usually do this kind of stuff. They try to make sure the footage is real, not fake, and they try to make sure footage is recent, not old. So this is the only footage where I can find that has been geo-confirmed by respected open source intelligence community. So let's watch this. Now, this is how the geo-sourcing or geo-confirmation works. They looked at the structures in the footage and they compared it with structures that we know from satellite and from other images of the site, of the area. And that lined up. And on top of that, they made sure the footage was recent. It was not an old footage. Because important to point out, Israel has been targeting Natanz and Esfahan for a while, for the last week now. We have seen the pictures of the damages from the footage Israel releases, from footage Iranian officials and Iranian citizens release, and we also see the damage from the satellite. But this is a new footage, so it's likely, very, very likely, actually it's been confirmed. What am I saying? It's confirmed that this footage is from the US strike last night, but this was from the submarine that was in the Arabian Sea and it fired cruise missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles. It's not from the B-2 strike. Moving on, Iran had a lot of warnings for a lot of people, including the United States, but it also had warning for the Gulf countries, especially the countries that were holding US bases. And the warning was simple. If they help, if US jets take off from those bases and they help strike Iran, Iran will attack back these countries. Iran will consider itself at war with all these countries. More specifically, Iran was talking to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, where we have some of our biggest bases. Well, as you guys can see from Operation Midnight Hammer's image, none of these countries were involved. In fact, we took the eastern route. The only airspace which was likely breached was Syria and Iraq. But then again, no one's respecting Syria and Iraq's airspace, just to be honest. But the new Syrian government had said Israel has full freedom to use their airspace to strike Iran. They're not fans of Iran because Iran spent $100 billion supporting Assad so Assad can drop chemical bombs on Syrian citizens. So the new government is not a fan of Iran and the Ayatollahs. So they do not mind other countries using their airspace to attack Iran. But based on these, no Gulf countries were used. They weren't involved in the strike in any way. But that doesn't mean they're not happy. Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, considers Iran and Ayatollah the new Hitler. So this is how he is reacting after the strikes right now. he has to pretend to not be happy, but in reality, almost every country in the Middle East is happy as they can be because Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons now. World is a safer place. Now moving on, President Trump also sent out a message to Iran, and the message was simple. Any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Thank you. Now, this really refers to Iran's warning that they will attack US bases. They have made multiple warnings over the last week and probably over the last few years. But in the last few days, they have been really doubling down, saying that, hey, you guys are seeing what we're doing in Israel, right? Our missiles are getting through the air defenses. Well, guess what? We can target US bases with a lot more ease than Israel. And if the US does anything, Iran's message was, we're going to go after US bases in the Middle East. So this is the message President Trump has. And I'm pretty sure if Iran does attack US bases and we have casualties, we have a mass casualty event, that would mean the United States is officially at war. And it wouldn't just be the United States. It would be NATO versus Iran. Because this is what the UK Prime Minister just said this morning. If Iran attacks US personnel, we will consider it an attack on a NATO country. That means Article 5. US is part of NATO. In fact, US is the biggest spender in NATO. So if US is attacked, US bases are attacked, we will have another NATO coalition in the Middle East. So this is where we need to talk about what options does Iran really have, because they cannot just not do anything. That would look weak to the domestic audience, the domestic citizens of Iran, and that wouldn't be good for the Ayatollah or the IRGC or the Iranian government official. So they can strike more. They can strike against Israel, which they did last night. Just hours after the US strike, Iran launched one of the most devastating strikes against Israeli cities. But they also have other options. They can withdraw from the NPT. That's the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, which Iran is part of, but they're not really following it. The treaty basically said they have to work with UN agencies to make sure they don't enrich uranium past the limited amount. But Iran's not been following this anyway. The other option they have, of course, is closing Strait of Hormuz. For those of you guys who don't know, that's the important strait. For those of you guys who don't know, this is Strait of Hormuz right here. It's right next to Iran, but it's also next to Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman. All these countries, including Kuwait, they use this Strait of Hormuz to ship out their oil. In fact, 20% of world's oil goes through this strait every single day, and it's a very narrow choke point. In fact, this narrowest path is only 20 miles long. And Iran has threatened multiple times in history that they will block this strait and block off world's oil. And even though it's just 20%, and I know we made a video about this yesterday, and a lot of you guys pointed out that, hey, US doesn't really get a lot of oil from Middle East. We have to keep in mind that if the Middle East oil, even if not the whole 20%, just a small percentage of it is taken off the market, the prices will skyrocket like crazy all over the world. Even if US doesn't use Middle Eastern oil, we will be affected. The consumers here will be affected, and that will play an important role in upcoming midterms and any election that happens. So Iran knows they have kind of a leverage here, but in reality, this could also be the declaration of World War III or a broader conflict if they do try to do it. Well, guess what? The Iranian parliament just moved to approve plans to close Strait of Hormuz. Now, they do need final approval from the security forces in Iran, but if Iran does go through with this, US Navy is right there. In fact, we have aircraft carriers and other ships just patrolling the Arabian Sea, Red Sea, and even the Persian Gulf. So if Iran tries to block off Strait of Hormuz, that would be a huge escalation. In fact, some kind of sketchy stuff is already going on in Strait of Hormuz. A lot of GPS jamming that has been going on. Now, I don't know too much about Strait of Hormuz and how the GPS stuff works there, but I talked to a friend who actually makes this journey quite often. He works in the shipping industry, the tanker industry, and apparently this has been going on for years. Iranians have been jamming GPS there for a long time, so this is not something that's out of the ordinary, but if they do try to close it down, that would be something that's definitely problematic. Now, moving on, we have some statements from the Iranian foreign minister. This is the guy, Saeed Abbas, RRGC. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but this is what he said. Last week, we were in negotiations with the United States when Israel decided to blow up that diplomacy. Well, this is not actually true. They are like, they're just changing the history to make sure it supports their argument. In reality, the negotiations were over on the 60-day mark. Iran knew they had a deadline, and that's when the Israeli strike started. And it started with U.S. approval. It wasn't just like U.S. was negotiating and Israel just started striking. Well, he does the same thing with this week. Just a few days ago, the foreign minister went to Geneva, Switzerland to negotiate with EU delegation, which included UK, France, and Germany. And this is what he's had to say about this. This week, we held talks with the E3 EU when US decided to blow up that diplomacy. What conclusion would we draw? When in reality, the negotiations were over, and they were over because of Iran. Iran said very publicly that, hey, we're not going to negotiate until Israel stops striking. And the negotiation was over. Both sides made statements. Iran said, hey, nothing was achieved in the negotiations. EU said, hey, nothing was achieved in the negotiation. Iran is not budging on the uranium enrichment issue. Iran says they want to keep uranium enrichment. The West does not want them to keep it. Well, guess what? The negotiations were over and there was no progress. That's why the strikes were carried out. In fact, we have seen reports that the strike was supposed to happen on Tuesday morning last week, but it didn't because we were giving negotiation a chance. They were supposed to happen on the 17th. The plans were in place. So US gave negotiations as much of a chance it could, but they realized that Iran was not willing to budge. So we went ahead with the strikes. Now the Iranian foreign minister is traveling to Moscow to meet with Putin. If Russia enters the war, it becomes a full-blown regional conflict. But Putin cannot afford to let Iranian regime fall. After propping up Assad, losing Tehran would be a strategic disaster. His grip on Middle East is slipping. And this is where I want to show an important, or I guess shocking message that the Russian Security Council had just put out this morning. He's also the former president. And on top of that, he hates business basics, because if we go to his account, he has business basics blocked for like years now. He just hates how we cover him or Russia. So this is what he said this morning. Medvedev, his name is Dmitry Medvedev. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their nuclear weapons. I'm guessing he is referring to Russia, but I doubt that's going to go down well with the international community. Again, he's very hardline Russian politicians. He may not be speaking for Putin, but definitely not a comment that we can just ignore, because he does hold a lot of power within the Russian government. Now, so as of now, the only retaliation Iran has approved is the blocking of Strait of Hormuz. Again, the approval is still waiting for the security authorities, but we made a video about this yesterday, what this would mean for the world, what this would mean for the oil prices, and what this means for you and me.